टपकता है नहीं।
Uh, Hi, good afternoon, or rather, I should say good evening. Good evening, guys. I hope I'm audible to everybody. Yeah, good evening. Okay, good evening. Good evening to you as well. Let's wait for 5 more minutes. है ना? Let's wait for 5 more minutes. Let other people join as well, and then we're gonna move ahead and start up. Okay. Yeah, till the time, if anybody is having any doubts, maybe related to anything that we have covered out, maybe in yesterday's session, and to the people who are already available in yesterday's session, if you have any doubts, push your doubts in the chat section, or we'll wait for other people to join in then. Doubts, hai? If you have any doubts, push your doubts in the chat section. My name is Arun Kudyal, right? Uh, and yeah. Yeah, so just in case, चलो वो I'll give you at the end of the session, है ना? If you wanna go around and connect on LinkedIn, you can do that as well. Nah, definitely my name is not Technology for All, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Okay. By the way, how many of you were available in yesterday's session? How many of you were there in yesterday's session? 1, 2. Okay, how to the people who are available in yesterday's session, just give me a yes in the chat section so that I could know. Backup ke liye, I most probably think that you might have got the recorded videos and stuff, right? Did you get the recorded videos? Recorded videos mile? Nahi mile? Are? How is that possible? You might have got it. No? Oh, don't worry. I'll ask my team to give you that. So you can go back and have a look on that. I just hope you might have enjoyed yesterday's session. We're going to do a lot of stuff today, right? And we'll be doing, it's fine. I'll ask my team to do it for you people, right? That is something that we can definitely could do around. Okay. Anything else that you want to talk about, or you just want to share or something? Maybe some specific things that you want us to cover out or anything. One second. Huh? Okay. Yeah, this is our second session. Definitely, it's our second session. In yesterday's session, we had a look on HTML and stuff, right? And in today's session, we'll be looking into CSS. And wait, let me share you up with the screen so that you guys can have a look. So I hope the screen is visible, right? So this is the thing that we have covered. Like this is what we have thought as of now, that what we are going to do, that day one, we are going to talk about HTML that we have done already. We'll be talking about CSS and styling. Tomorrow we'll be having a looking on Bootstrap and Bootstrap classes, right? How did I get a job in Apple? Okay. So I was an IIT, right? I don't know how, but I was like pretty okay in studies. Then in third year, I got an internship at Apple, and that internship got converted into PPO, which is called as pre-placement offer, right? Then I started working for Apple for like around 2.5 years, and this is the whole story. Yeah. So this is how I got into Apple and stuff. Okay, so this is what we have thought of for you people. That 15th, which was yesterday, we are going to talk about HTML. Today, we are going to talk about CSS and styling. Tomorrow, we'll be covering out Bootstrap. And then from next Wednesday onwards, we'll be talking about complete JavaScript. I'll highly recommend you don't lose on JavaScript part, because that is what a lot of companies ask. And this is going to be the core foundation of any of the frameworks that you'll be doing in near future. Maybe it could be React, it could be, we'll be talking about React, right? So maybe it could be React, it could be Angular, it could be Vue, it could be pretty much any framework for that matter, right? So JavaScript is like mere minimum basics, like that you actually need to know if you want to go into web development or FSD or anything for that matter, right? Even JavaScript as a standalone programming language is very, very powerful, as we have talked about already in yesterday's session. It's going to be very, very extensive kind of like a go through on JavaScript. We'll be covering out pretty much everything on JavaScript, starting from very basic syntax, how we're going to declare variables, to end how we're going to do a lot of DOM manipulations, getting getting elements from the HTML, styling them up, doing a lot of functionality wala kaam and all of these things, right? So I'll highly recommend you don't miss any of the videos on JavaScript, because that's going to be very, very important. Okay, how many of you are web developers, by the way? Like, how many of you worked on HTML, CSS, and JS before? Maybe not JS, or maybe just HTML or CSS. How many of you have a hands-on on HTML and CSS, by the way? HTML, CSS. Other people? Okay. If you know HTML, CSS, just give me a yes on the chat section so that I could know how many of you have worked on HTML, CSS, or maybe Bootstrap or anything like that. Okay, five, five, six people, 7, 8, 9, and rest of the. Okay, how many of you are very new to the technology of HTML, CSS? By the way, like you guys are seeing HTML and CSS for the very first time. How many of you are watching HTML and CSS for the first time? Just give me a yes in the chat section. That could be great. Okay, few people. That's nobody else. Just two people. 3, 4, 5. So why are you getting ashamed of this? Like it's fine. It's always the first time for everything, right? Chalo. So let's not waste time. It's 5, 8. So we'll try to wrap this up. It's not audible. I think you need to connect your audio because I think that you might not have connected your audio. Let me just do a put this in chat. Connect your audio. Yeah, I know. I know I'm audible. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'm thinking ki most probably if we could do something like in tomorrow's session, what we could do, we can combine HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and could go around and create a full-fledged application. How about that? I'm thinking of doing something like that. Huh? कुछ बनाना चाहते हो? If you can, we can totally could do that. We can take HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and create a full-fledged project. How about that? Shall we do that? No, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We'll cover Bootstrap tomorrow, right? So we can do that, है ना? And then I'm thinking in JavaScript, what we could do, we can actually go around and create a full-fledged application. Like maybe what could be the most? Okay, we can do a to-do list, right? We can design a to-do list. You can add your to-do list. You can remove items from the to-do list and stuff like that. So we can go around and create a full-fledged application as a to-do list for in the case if we'll be working on JavaScript, right? So that could be done. Chalo, great. All right. So shall we start? Start करें? If you're ready, I'm ready. We can go around and start the session, and we can go around and start by tomorrow completing Bootstrap and cover full-fledged. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking, and that's what I just discussed. We can totally can go around and do that. है ना? चलो. All right then. So करते हैं कुछ. Let's go around and do something. Okay. Let's go to desktop. Or maybe you know what? What I'm going to do is I believe I have a TFA wala hai na. This would be the project that we have done, I believe, hai na. So let's call this just HTML, hai na, and take everything in and paste it in HTML. And what we could do is we can go around and create a new folder, and let's call this CSS, hai na. So chalo, let's go to terminal and let's say cd desktop and TFA. And let's open up this with VS Code. Nice. Chalo. Recorded sessions. I'll mail you up. है ना? I'll ask my team to mail you up for everything. है ना? That is something that we can do. I'll ask them to mail you up or maybe text you up with the link and stuff like that. So you can go around and have a look. And one more request is going to be is ki whenever you're writing something in the chat section, make sure you're writing it to everybody, because what happens is that even if you're asking few doubts, maybe other person is thinking about the same doubt, right? So I'll highly recommend you go around if you're writing anything. It could be anything. It could be a weird review, right? Or it could be a weird feedback or stuff like that. नहीं ऐसा तो नहीं होता है. It's not like that. Not like that. So how about if you could take a doubt like at the end of the session, will that be okay? Like if you'd be having any doubts on HTML, we can get that out at the end of the session. Will that be okay? Hmm? Can we do that? Anna? Kirtana? So at the end of the session, we can go around. We'll try to cover everything out by like 6:30, right? So I'll not take much of your time. Chalo. So in the CSS folder, we have just created up CSS folder. Uh, Before we actually go around and do something, again, Kirtana, please write everything that you're writing in chat section publicly. The reason is कि मेरा chart वाला ना it goes to the person who do the DM and stuff. Anyways, chalo, let's go to OneNote and try and understand few things. Okay, are you ready? If you're ready, just give me a big yes. We'll move ahead and we'll start talking about certain things. Hmm? Chalo, nice, great. So let's start with CSS, right? Let's start with CSS. So in today's session, we'll be talking thoroughly about CSS, and pretty much everything would be covered out except for a few things, which are like advanced CSS wala part. If we'll get time, sometimes we can like have a detailed discussion because it won't be possible to cover out each and everything in CSS because I not exactly in CSS. I'll cover the 90% of the part. The rest 10% of the part is something that actually requires a lot of time. For example, if few people might have looked on CSS, so I'll not be discussing grids in this session. So if you are expecting that I'll be covering out grids, so I'll not cover out grids, right? So grids is something that I leave. Flex boxes, we'll talk about flex boxes and stuff, right? So advanced wala CSS wala part we'll cover out, but we'll not have a look on grids. The reason is that grids take a lot of time and it's like outdated. Nobody uses grids anymore. Everybody uses flex boxes, right? But I can assure you for the fact that pretty much any of the applications that you see, you would be able to build it, at the end of the session, most probably, right? If you'd be having any doubts, we can cater on to those doubts. All right, for the people who are very new to CSS, well, welcome to the course, right? So CSS basically shorts for cascading style sheets. And yesterday we had a look on a few certain HTML elements, and you saw that using just bare minimum HTML looks horribly ugly, right? So we pretty much would be needing a framework or a library wherein we can, use all of these elements and use all of these technologies. As HTML as a technology, it could go around and style these up, right? And CSS is probably one of the technology that I'll say every front end developer or FSD developer, he might have used this, right? Again, there are a lot of alternatives. There is something called as SAS as well in the market, right, which is booming these days. You can go around and learn SAS by your own. Again, SAS is like very easy. If you know CSS, SAS is nothing in front of you. But CSS, again, it's the fundamental. It's exactly like if you're learning any programming language, you actually need to go and do the hands dirty on C and C++, right? If you want to go around and learn any of the other programming languages. So CSS is exactly the same, right? If you want to learn SAS, you should be pretty much be knowing a little bit here and there about CSS. A lot of people are very scared of CSS. I have seen that in my career. A lot of people are very scared of CSS. Trust me, CSS is nothing in front of you if you know what the basics are, right? So in this course, we'll be talking about just basics. We'll be talking about how you're going to go around and design your application in a very beautiful way, right? So let's start with that. What do you mean by cascading style sheets? First of all, how many of you actually know what do you mean by cascading? Quick answers. What do you mean by cascading? Anyone who has any idea that what do you mean by cascading? Cascading, a typical meaning, right? English version meaning of cascading. Anybody? What is cascading? Quick. Will not waste time. Framing accordingly. Not exactly. I'll tell you what a typical British English means. What do you when you mean something by like cascading? Cascading means when you try to fill something up on a very huge speed, right? When you're trying to fill something, right, and at a very high speed. When you're trying to do something at a very high speed, that is called as cascading. We'll talk about what happens when and why this CSS is called as cascading. We'll talk about that, right? But CSS is the technology which will be used in order to go around and style certain things up, right? CSS comes very handy. You do not need to go around and install or download or do anything for that matter. CSS is something that your browser already knows. There are three typical languages that your browser already knows, which is typically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript is the main only programming language that your browser knows, right? Correct. Yeah. So what do you do? Cascading typically means when you're trying to attack onto one typical HTML elements and you're filling everything up with a lot of different things. And when I mean lot of different things, we'll talk about that what these a lot of different things are. Right. The extension typically, when we saw in the last session that the typical extension at the case when you're using HTML is .html. In case of CSS is going to be .css. Right. Now these CSS are going to attack or it's going to tackle onto something of HTML elements, right? There are going to be HTML elements that we covered out in yesterday's session. So what happens? CSS basically cater onto these HTML elements, right? It could be a p tag, it could be a body tag, it could be anchor tag, it could be pretty much any tag for that matter. It's going to pick that up and going to do styling on these typical elements, right? Now, how the styling is done, this is the most important part. When you talk about the styling in CSS, the styling in CSS is very straightforward. When you talk about styling, the styling is that you actually need to mention the property that you want to change and you actually give the value of the property that for whatever property that you want to change. But now what these CSS properties are going to be, we are going to talk about that in a little second. The session is all going to be about these CSS properties, right? So what you do, you just target onto one HTML element. And once you target that up, what you do, you pick a CSS property and you give them mention the value and your your browser just basically go around and render that up. For example, let me go around and give you a very basic and handy example for the same. Let's say I go around and create a new file in here and I just call this index.html, right? And in here I'm just gonna go around and create a bare minimum application that I could go, right? So let's say I create a header. uh, I create a header. And inside this header, let's say I go around and create a navigation bar, which right now we are not going to go around and create. But in the header, I go around and create a main. And inside this main, I'm going to put everything in between of this main, right? And then at the end, I'm going to go around and create the footer. For the people who have joined the session for the very first time, I'll highly recommend you go back and watch the videos on HTML. We have talked about this basic structure and the basic structure looks exactly this way, right? So this would be the heading. And let's say in the heading, I'm going to go around and create an H1 and I'm just going to say, welcome to CSS crash course, right? So let's save that. Let's go and put our this on live. You know what? I'm just going to open this up on Chrome rather than opening this up on Safari. I'm just going to go around and open Chrome. Oh, sorry. All right. Right. So welcome to CSS crash course, right? So this is how it's going to look like. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it up this way so that you'd be able to watch this. You know? So we'll be doing everything live. So this is how we're going to go around and tackle this out. Right. Chalo. Nice. Now, I typically told you what I said, that every time you'll be doing anything on CSS, what we are going to do, we are going to tackle onto any of the HTML elements. And what we are going to do, we are going to style that up. How? By mentioning any of the CSS property and giving the value of that CSS property, right? So let's say I want to go around and style this H1, right? This is what I want. What I want is that I want to go around and style this this particular heading. So let me introduce you to few of the properties of CSS, right? So the very first thing that you can do if you want to go around and style any of the HTML attributes or HTML elements, what you can do is use an attribute in these HTML element called a style. So what you can do, you can just say style is equals to and put double inverted comma or double quotes, and inside this double quotes you can go around and mention any of the CSS property. The very basic CSS property that I might have you guys have had a look is color property. You can go around and change the color. Let's suppose I want to change the color as blue. So I can go around and just say blue. If I save this, you could see that the heading now is in blue color, right? So this is just, the very basic thing that you can go around and do, right? So one thing that we had to look on, that how we can do that if you want to go around and target onto any of the one HTML elements, what you could do, you can just go in here, you can mention the style attribute, and in the style attribute, you can mention any of the CSS property and the value of that CSS property, whatever you want to give, you can go around and give that, right? So this is how you can go around and style this. Pretty easy, right? Now, let's say what we wanted to do was, let's say I come in here in the main And let's say what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a div and I'm just going to call this container. And inside this container, what I'm going to do is go around and create another div, which is going to be, let's say, box one, or maybe container one, let's say container one. And inside this, I'm going to go around and create a paragraph, and I'm just going to call this, let's say, lorem 30. Save. Sorry, lorem 30. Lorem 30. Right. Save. So you'd see this would be the stuff. Now at the end, at the footer, what I could do is, let's say, and copyright sign, and I could just say 2021. Let's say technology for all. Technology for all. Save, and you'd see this. Let's say at the end, what we could do down here, we could just go around and create an HR. Save. Looks pretty cool. And the footer, before we actually go around and do something, we can just go around and do it like this. Okay. Why are we giving navigation, but output there is no any navigation bar? Because we have not put anything in between of the navigation bar. You could see that it's pretty much empty, right? It's just a tag. It's just a tag. It's exactly like that. If you're just writing paragraph and not putting anything in the paragraph, it's going to look exactly the same way, right? So we have not put anything in between of this navigation bar because we have not created any navigations bar. So we'll go around and do that. Don't worry about that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to did I tell you about classes and IDs yesterday? Did I tell you about that in yesterday's session? Did we discuss about IDs and classes? No, we didn't. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so never mind. Never mind. So let's say we do not have these classes, okay? We have not discussed about this, so we are not going to talk about that. So let's say I've created up this main container, which is this div. So did we even discuss div? No, I guess we didn't discuss div, right? No, right? Okay, great. Did we not discuss div? Quickly, if you have not, just give me a no. Okay, great, got it. So that is why a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. Okay, fine, it's okay. All right, let's go to OneNote and let's try and understand what is the utility of div and spans and stuff like that. Yeah, we can do that. Don't worry. We'll talk about everything. Now, see here. Let's say we talked about in yesterday's session that a bare minimum, a web page looks exactly this way. That we have what we have a header. This would be the header. This would be the sidebar. This would be the main body, and then we'd be having a footer, kind of like an application, and this would be the main in which we'll be containing everything. Now, if I actually go around and disintegrate this and have a look on the main body for a real second, this main body could also contain a lot of different things. Now, to just try and understand this, what we are doing, we are more concerned towards this main part, right? If you'll just have a look on this main part is where your main everything that you're going to consume is going to be in here, which is the main part of your body, right? So what we could do here is, rather than just putting everything, just into this main bat, what we could do is actually go around and create a lot of different containers, right? So what do? We say that let's suppose if I want to go around and create a blog post, kind of like an application, what I can say is that every blog we could go, yeah, you can use articles as well, that is fine, but you actually need a containers, right? Why do we not use articles? Because articles ke andar, if you'll go around and create any of the another HTML tags, you'll get stuck while you will be using on JS. When we'll talk about JavaScript, we'll talk about this. But as of now, you need to understand that just by using articles in between of this main bar, it's going to give you a lot of different things, right? I told you about articles in yesterday's session, but in articles, what's the problem is that it will give you a lot of hard times accessing while you'll be doing all the DOM manipulation, right? We'll talk about this in JavaScript. Don't worry, right? You can ask me this question at that time. But what you actually need to understand is that if you are working on this main part of your application, you could actually go around and create multiple other sections as well, right? Multiple other sections. Now these sections could again contain internal section within themselves, right? It could be something like this, kind of like an architecture. So div is exactly the same. Div means when you're trying to contain a container, when you're trying to create a container which could contain multiple n number of HTML elements within itself, then you say that, okay, I'm going to go around and create a div, right? So div is going to be a block level element. We have talked about block level and inline, kind of like an element. So div is a block level element wherein you can go around and consume n number of HTML elements within itself. So that's the exact same thing that I'm doing in the code. If you'll have a look, what I've done, I've created up a div, and inside this div, what I'm doing, I've created another div, and this div, I'm expecting this to be a blog. let's say I'm expecting this to be a blog, right? If I'm expecting this to be a blog, I'm saying that I could actually go around, could contain n number of blogs, and these n number of blogs could look exactly like this. So if I'll save this, and if you'll have a look on the architecture, so this architecture looks something like this, wherein I could say that this is gonna look horribly ugly as of now because we are not any CSS as of now. But if you'll have a look, this is blog number 1, this is blog number 2, and this is blog number 3. Why using div inside a div? Because we are saying that this is going, see, try and understand. इसको समझने की कोशिश करो. If I go around and inspect this page, I'll just make this a little bigger. If you actually go around and inspect this page, what you'll find out is that if you look at these elements, if you look at the header, this is your main header. If you'll have a look at the main section comprises of everything, right? This is everything. Now inside this also I've created up a div. The reason is because I could actually go around and put another div in the sidebar and say, okay, this div is going to be completely for my ad. Actually, if you remember, I talked about this, that these days people have a habit of keeping, an extreme corner for your ads as well. So that ad itself could be a div, right? So in the main, I could have n number of divs depending upon what are all the contents that I want to display. For example, I'll give you a very good example for this. Let's say if I go to amazon.in, right? If I go to amazon.in, what you're seeing out here is the best example of the use of the div. I can say that this is your header and this is your main part. This is your all of your main part. And what I'm doing, I'm containing everything it inside a main container, a bigger div. And what I'm saying that everything that you're seeing from here to here, let's say this is going to be div 1, this is going to be your div 2, this is going to be your div 3, this is going to be your div 3, this is going to be your div 4, this is going to be your div 5, and so on and so forth. For any of the sections that you're creating, imagine these sections as divs. Then only you will be able to create a good architecture on your HTML. I hope this is making sense to everybody. So what I'm doing, I'm creating up a main. Oh, okay. So somebody asked me a question that what is the difference? Oh, I'm so sorry. What is the difference between div and body? Body is the whole page. Body is the whole page. See, try and understand. It's exactly like if you have a house. A house is a body. Try and understand in this way. The whole house is a body. The entrance is going to be the, what you call this as a bigger div. And when you enter into a room, that is going to be another div inside a div. And then from that room, you go to your main room, a bedroom, that is going to be another div. I hope this example made sense to anybody. I trying to explain this, right? So what you're doing, the main is your main architectural infrastructure of your house is going to be the main body. And when you enter from one of the doors, that is going to be another div. Then you go on inside another room, that's going to be another div. Then in the main bedroom, you have an attached bathroom. Then you go inside another div. I hope this is making sense what I'm trying to explain you, right? So from one section to another section, from another section to another section, then from another section to another section. This is why we are creating so many divs. I hope this is making sense to everybody now. How many of you are clear with this point? Are we clear with this point? That why are we making all of these divs, right? So keep that in mind. This is going to be a little important, right? So that is why what we have done, we have created up this what you're calling this as um, this div. This is the bigger div. You can expect this as your main gate, the main entrance. This is your house, this is your main entrance, and from the main entrance you are moving to your, let's say, your living area, and this could be a dining area, this could be a bedroom or stuff like that. Now inside that bedroom you have another attached bathroom, let's say a paragraph. I hope this architecture is making sense to everybody. सही है? आगे चले? Shall we move ahead? Shall we move ahead? सही है? Now these divs, now there could be a number of reasons, right? That let's suppose if I just want to access this particular p. Now what happens if you're working on CSS, we can, yeah, huh? Br is like for break. Why will we use break? There is a, this question is completely wrong, first of all, right? Div is a block level element wherein br is an inline element. So I definitely don't need any inline element because I need to contain containers, right? I need to create containers. So in order to create containers, I should have a block level element. So this question is completely invalid for that reason, right? Chalo, let's not waste time. Let's say what I want to do. I want to target onto every paragraph here, every paragraph, right? Let's say every paragraph. Yeah. Span tag, just give me 1 second. We'll come back to span tag. अभी span tag बताता हूँ थोड़ी देर में. Now let's say what we'll be doing. We are talking about this paragraph. Now let's suppose what I want to do. I want to take on to every paragraph in the document. Good evening, Mohammed. Welcome back, by the way. Yeah. So for every p tag, let's suppose I want to go around and style everything, every of the paragraph that I have inside of my document, right? So rather than going inside every of the paragraph and writing style is equals to and stuff like that, we have a very beautiful way of writing the same thing, which is called as inline CSS. So in inline CSS, what you can do, you can mention out a style tag in here, which is going to be a style tag. This would be a style tag. And inside the style tag, you can give pretty much any of the style tag. But the problem here is going to arise that how am I going to select every of the paragraph? So style does what? Style says, okay, fine. You know what? What you can do is give me any of the CSS element, name that CSS element and put a bracket in front of me and mention any of the CSS properties that you want to go around and check for. Let's say I want to change the color of every of the paragraph that I have to, let's say, blue. Not blue, I've already taken. Let's say green. Green. So if I'll save this, you'll see every paragraph in the document, every paragraph, just paragraph, nothing else. Every paragraph will be changed. Can you see this? Every paragraph will be changed now, right? So you got this, that if you want to go around and cater to every of the HTML element which is available in your document, what you could do, you can just mention up a style tag up in here in your head section, because again, if you remember, we talked about this, that head contains the metadata related to your document. And what is a style? A style is just a metadata. Style is just a way of telling that, hey, I have an HTML element and the value of the metadata. What is a metadata? Data related to a data. This is your data. What is your data? A paragraph is your data. And you're associating this data to another data, which is going to be a meta tag, right? What does we call it? Call what? This metadata. I told you it's called as metadata. The data of the data is called as metadata. Any data related to the data is called as metadata. That is why there is a tag related to the same, which is called as meta tag, right? I think we also missed out on this character set and stuff like that because we have a less amount of time, right? So सारा चीज cover out नहीं हो पाता है. So for example, title. Title is a meta tag related to the document. Title is what? That what is going to be the title of the document. Let's suppose I come here and say CSS cheat sheet. Cheat sheet. Right, save this, you'll see that it would go around and change it, right? Pretty cool stuff. I hope this paragraph is okay for everyone, that how am I going to do this? Yeah, don't worry, you'll get the recordings. I completely forgot that I was supposed to give you the recordings. I did talk to my team, but I don't know why didn't they forward you up, right? So don't worry about that. How many of you are clear till here? If you have any questions, ask your questions. And if you're good till here, just give me a yes, we'll move ahead. How many of you are clear till here that how am I going to do all of these things, right? For example, if let's suppose you'll get it over, you'll get the link over either email or messages. Don't worry about that. Okay. Right. A very good question came in the chat section. If you'll have a look on the question of Avinash, Avinash said, hey, okay, these contains 3 different paragraphs, but the question here arises, what if I only wanted to style only odd number of paragraphs? Let's say the question here now arises that how am I going to style only odd number of paragraphs, right? Only paragraph 1 and paragraph 3 should be styled, rather paragraph 2 and paragraph 4 should not be styled. This is where your metadata comes into picture, or your attributes comes into picture. And the 2 very important attributes that we have is going to be something called as ID and something called as class, right? No, yeah, using classes and ID, you could do this using the same. So what do? You say that what I'm going to do, let's suppose you are only interested in creating, or you are only interested in styling this particular div or this particular paragraph for that matter. You only wanted to style this paragraph 1, rather you didn't wanted to style any of the other paragraphs. So what do? You make this an ID. You create an ID for this, and let's say I call this ID as para 1. Save this. So now this ID, this paragraph has a unique ID called as para1, right? So what will I do? I'll go to my style stack. Rather than giving the styles for each and every paragraph, what will I do? I will say, hey, I have an ID of para1 and I need to style this para1 as color as green. Save this and you will see nothing happened. The reason here nothing happened is because you are mentioning an ID and you have to tell your style that, hey, this para1 is not a HTML element. Because if you remember, we are writing it exactly as that we are writing of a paragraph. So you'll have to tell your style tag that, hey, this is not an HTML element, rather it's an ID. And how do you mention an ID? By putting a number sign in front of it. You just write hash para1. And now if you'll save this, you'll see only one of the paragraphs getting styled up. Make sense? Does this make sense? Keep that in mind. ID for every element is going to be unique no matter what. No matter what. But the problem here arises, and I see a lot of developers doing this, that what they do is pick this ID and paste it to every of the other paragraphs as well. And if you'll save this, you'll realize that ID, though it's unique, but still, even if you're writing IDs to another paragraphs, there it's still going to go around and style your document. It's still going to do that. But where will be the problem that will be arising? It will be arising when you will be doing the DOM manipulation. When you will be trying to access this particular paragraph from JavaScript, your JavaScript will start throwing you errors. That is why always keep in mind that what are you going to do if you want to club along with different questions. For example, the question that I asked you, the question was very simple, that I wanted to go around and style only the even numbered paragraphs. So in that case, rather than using ID, you use something called as class. And I'm just going to call this class as, let's say, even, right? So what I'm going to do, if every of the class which is going to be even, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give the class as the same, which is going to be this even, right? And let's say I give this class as odd, right? And similarly to this paragraph, I'm going to give the value as odd. Now, if I save this, this is not going to work. Why? Because you have only put the style as for para1 and it couldn't find any of the IDs as para1 because I removed this. Now you actually need to tell it that I am only interested in, styling up any of the paragraphs which is in the even number. So what you'll do, you'll mention dot, which means class, and you'll just write even. And if you'll save this, you will see, did I write it even? It should be odd. This should be odd. And you'll see that only, this should be odd, even, odd, even, right? Save. So only the even ones are paragraph, or even ones are in green color. Again, you can go around and do the same thing for odd as well. You can just write dot odd, and you can just come around in here and could say color is going to be, let's say, this indigo color. Save, and you'll find out that this is how you're going to go around and style this. Even means even numbered paragraph. I've given the name as, this is odd number paragraph because this is paragraph 1, which is odd. 1 is odd. Paragraph 2, which is even, right? Paragraph 3, which is odd. Paragraph 4, 4 is even, right? Number 4 is even. So I am just calling this para 4, right? So you could see that the first paragraph, I've mentioned the class as odd because the number of this paragraph is odd. The number of this paragraph is even. So I've given the class as even, and so on and so forth. Right? Got it? Other people? Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. But again, it's advanced CSS, right? We'll not go around and talk about key. You can go around and style, select all of these things. Again, you can do that. You can just do P colon first child and give the style for whatever style that you want. But again, we are not gonna go there because it's kind of like an advanced CSS and we do not have a lot of time to actually go around and cover that out. Okay, other people, are we good? आगे चलें because there are a lot of things to cover out. So shall we move ahead? So dot is for classes, slash is for ID. So if you're mentioning ID, you have to access it by using hash. If you're using classes, you have to access it by using dot. Got it? Shall we move ahead? आगे चलें? Should we discuss about few other things? Now, the things that we did up right here, these are not accepted in the industry. The reason is we have a habit of categorizing everything. So is the case with the documents or front-end development as well. We generally do not write any CSS in HTML. HTML is a completely different technology. CSS is a completely different technology. Rather, what do? We don't write any CSS code in the HTML. What do? We say that, hey, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around and create a new file, which I'm going to call this as styles.css. You could name that pretty much anything. And what I'm going to do is go in here and link this file in CSS to styles.css. And if I'll save this and put that code inside here and save this, now you'll see that everything works completely fine. What I did initially here, I'm just going to write it out here as well. So I'm just going to write it's for your reference purposes. And I'm just going to go around and comment this out. Right. So this is called as inline CSS. इसको हम कहते हैं inline CSS, wherein you're writing CSS within your HTML document. That is called as inline CSS. This is called as external CSS, wherein you're writing every of the things externally to other, other file and linking that file to your HTML document. Make sense? Yeah, different tags can have same class name. That could happen. That could completely happen. Right now, I'm doing a little modification out here just for styling purposes. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to give this a class, div of the class of, let's say, container. And oh, rather I should give this as a class of container. So I'm just going to cut this out. This would be the bigger container. So I'm just going to call this container, and I'm just going to call this class as, let's say, inner container. Right? Save this, and I'm gonna do the same thing for other divs as well. I'm just gonna give the class as inner container. There is a lot of difference between the same container versus container fluid. There is a lot of difference. Actually the difference falls between the flow of the styling, right? So in the case where you're using container fluid, you can go around and flow up your styles from one parent to another child, and from child to a grandchild and stuff like that. It's a very, very complicated thing, right? It's a very, very complicated thing. Container means any of the block, or a container means a box which is containing other different things, right? For example, div, I can say that the div is going to be a container. Why? Because it's containing other things, other divs and other elements inside it. So I'm just gonna call this what do you call this, as a container, right? So that is why I'm just gonna call this container. Not exactly, not every time. See, abhi ke liye, let's not distract out, because again, time is very limited and we have to cover out a lot of things. So चल सकते हैं आगे चल सकते हैं. If you could allow me, we can start working on things. Okay. All of these things which you're curious about, we can talk about that at the end of the session. That is completely fine for me, right? Okay, na? Chalo. Now, chalo, nice. Now, let's say you want to have a very generic style for whole of your document, right? So there is something called as reset styling in CSS. Reset styling. What is this reset styling means? This reset styling is a styling which is going to be applied to your whole document. For example, if you want to set a whole background color for your whole document, that is something that you can do. What you can do is, rather than containing each and every element which is inside up your your document, what you can do, you can put a star in front of it and put this. So this is called as reset style. Reset style is going to be a resetting style which is going to be included to your whole of your document. For example, I want to keep the background color as, let's say, light gray, save, and this would look something like this, right? Wherein you have targeted onto your whole of your document rather than targeting onto your one of the paragraphs one at a time, right? So what you do is resetted your whole document into one small little line, wherein you're just gonna call this as for star, and any of the things that you want to do, you can just go around and mention this, right? Chalo, nice. Now what I'm gonna do is let's go around and make it a little interesting. Okay, let's say let's go around and create few navigation bar. So in the navigation bar, what I can do is header में मैंने navigation नहीं बनाया ना, तो बना लेते हैं. So एक nav बना लेते हैं, है ना? And if you remember in the navigation bar, if you remember, we have talked about this. Let's say this is not gonna go anywhere. As of now, I'm just gonna say home, and then I'm just gonna copy this out. I'm gonna paste it for like 4-5 times. So I'm just gonna copy, paste, 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 paste. Let's say this is going to be page 1, and let's see page 2, page 3, and let's say page 4. That's it. Page 5, page 4. Save. Right? So rather than cut, I'm just gonna put it in here. Right? Yeah, so star is basically just going to tell you that everything which is followed for your document. So now in here in the HTML, what I've done, I've created up a navigation bar, something like this, which is looking horribly ugly as of now, right? So it's not gonna go anywhere. So home ke liye, I can just say that this is going to index onto your CSS, index.html, right? So that is something that would work. So if you'll click on the home button, it's gonna come back to the home button, right? And there are a few navigation bar which is looking horribly ugly as of now. We're gonna go around and change that, don't worry. Cool, right? So now what I'm gonna do, just have a look out here. Now, if I'm going to say, let's say, I want to draw a border in front of this whole main file that I have. So what I can do, if you have a look on this, every of the div that you can see out here, every div is inside another container div. So what I can do, I can grab onto this container div and I can go around and style this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go onto this container, and I'm just gonna go around and style this. Now this is going to be little difficult for a lot of people who have not worked on CSS. So there is something called as border, right? There's something called as border. We'll talk about this border when we'll be working on box models in a little second. But this is a border. Border means the outer line, right? So what you can do, you can contain every of the things inside of a border, right? And how do we do that? Let's talk about that. So border ke liye, there are 3 things that you actually need to mention. The first thing is going to be that what would be the size of the border, right? How much thick your border is going to be. Then it's going to be how the style of your border, what would be the style of the border. Then you mention the color of the border. This is how you give the value of the border, right? So let's go around and do that. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to mention the border property. And in the border, I want the thickness of the border to be, let's say, 1 pixel. Pixels के बारे में भी थोड़ी देर में बात करते हैं. We'll talk about pixels and EM in a little second, but there is something called as 1 pixel. So let's say I want to create a border in front of the, around that container, which would be 1 pixel. Let's say it's going to be solid. You can again do a lot of things like dotted and stuff like that, but I'm right now let's do solid, and let's say the color that I want is going to be black. So if you'll save this, you'll see that this whole thing, the whole of the mean which was inside a container, every of the paragraph now is filled inside up with a border, right? This border is very marginal, right? So every of the things or every of the paragraph that you're seeing looks like a little congested. But again, we'll do that when we'll be talking about box models in a little second, right? So this is how I'm doing this. I hope this made sense to everybody, that how is this container? This container is basically containing every div that you have just created, right? That is why I was creating this div, because out in here, I can go around and do pretty much anything that I want. I hope this makes sense to everyone, that what I've done out here, I've captured onto this container. I've mentioned this class container dot container, and in here I've just mentioned out a border. Are we good? Guys, are we good? Clear? So we have made just a little kind of like a border out here, right? Again, we can go around and mention the width of the border as well, that how wide this is going to look like. Let's suppose if I keep this as 500 pixels, save. So you'd see that if you'll resize this, it's only going to be limited to 500 pixels, right? The best way of actually using width is going to be, rather than actually mention this in pixels, it's better if you mention it in percentage. So if let's suppose if I give it 80%, so this 80% is only going to be 80% from the right, right? So only the 80%, the rest 20% would be left from the right hand side, and rest of the 80% would be covered out for your this particular block which you're just creating out here. Yeah, we can do that as well, but it's not used. Nobody uses it. Definitely not in the industry that's what I want, right? So either you can mention it in pixels, which is like most recommended way, or you can just mention it in what you call this as a percentage. But remember it that if you are mentioning any of the percentage, and whatever percentage is left behind would be left behind from the right. Okay, so that is more important. That even for example, if I keep it 90, the rest of the remaining 10% would be taken out from your right hand side. So if you'll just have a look, the rest remaining 10% would be left from the right hand side of your document. That is more important. No, no, it depends on from system to system. It depends on from system to system. See, try and understand. Pixel is not a very standard thing, like wherein you could just say that 1 kg, 1 kg for you and for 1 kg is for me is for exactly the same. But 1 pixel for you and 1 pixel for me is definitely not going to be same. What we all know, I'll just tell you in a little second. Don't worry about that. But I'm just gonna keep the width as 100% for this sake, because it looks a little nice out here, right? So this is what I've done. So width, border, are we good with this? Width and border. I hope everybody could relate to width and border. How we could go around and do that. Width, border. Again, you can also do something like that. You can take this inner container as well. If let's suppose if I take this inner container, we can also go around and do the same thing in the inner container as well, wherein I can just go around and say border. And let's suppose 1 pixel. Let's make this dotted for a little second. And let's say this is going to be of the color indigo, let's say. Oh, no, not indigo. Rather, let's say pink, right? So if I save this, you'd see which one you can. Border क्यों नहीं बना? मैंने लगता है इसका नाम गलत किया क्या? Border 1 pixel dotted. चलो इसको solid रख लेते हैं. I think वो दिख नहीं रहा है उसके color में, I believe. 1 pixel solid pink. This should have worked. I have called this as inner container, right? Inner container. It should have worked though. Inner container. This is a div, right? And the div, it's very light, I believe so. Let's say red. Let's say, huh? Yeah. So this is how we can go around. It was very light though. And now the pink color is visible though, but let's make it this way. Okay, chalo. Don't worry. Okay, yeah. I'll take care of it. Okay, yeah. Okay, how many of you from like Hyderabad? Hyderabad's like how many of you are the residents of Hyderabad? Ooh, okay, got it. Okay, got it. So I'm extremely sorry. I forgot. Don't worry. I'll not speak in Hindi. Right? So I'm just gonna go around and comment this out because this is not necessary. I'm just gonna do it something like this. So okay, cool. Bangalore, great. I've been to Bangalore like twice or thrice. Okay, anyways, we'll talk about that. Ghaziabad, great. All right. So shall we move ahead? Even I'm from Uttarakhand, by the way. I'm from Dehradun. Just for just a PFA. Anyways, how can I? Yeah. So you can be in touch with me either on LinkedIn or any of the other ways, right? So okay, chalo. Let's. I want to give you a little basic idea about colors. Okay. My name. I told you my name. My name is Arun Kudyal. So just in case if somebody is interested, this is my name and this is my profile. You can go around and add me up. Okay. And we could go around and have a discussion out here as well, right? So you can DM me. That's completely fine, right? Okay. So this is it. Even if you want, I can just share you out with the link as well. Here's the link. Just in case if somebody wants to connect and ask you doubts. Even you can go around and ask me doubts. That's completely fine. A lot of students do. Yeah, great. So I'll have a after the session. I'm just gonna have a look on that as well. Chalo. Great. So shall we move ahead? I just want to give you a little idea about colors, by the way, right? So colors in case of your CSS could be at n number of ways. GitHub abhi dete hain. At the end of the session, I'll give you the link of my GitHub as well. Don't worry. Okay, I'll give you the link of my GitHub as well. All right. So I just want to give you a little insights on the colors. So in case of your colors, there are few things that you can go around and do in colors. The color is like basically like if it's a very genuine color or it's like a very basic color, for example, red, blue, green, indigo, black, white, all of these things, you can just write the name of the color. That's completely fine. So your CSS is just going to go around and render that up. But in the case, you could also see a lot of people writing something like this, right? Something called a slash, let's say 0000000, and you'd see that it automatically detects that it's going to be black color, right? Because every color that you see in CSS, it is based on hexadecimal code. For the people who have no idea about hexadecimal code is a code which goes from 0 to F, right? Why it goes from 0 to F? Because 0 to 9 is going to be digits, and after that it's going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on and so forth. No, not as of now. Not Rohit, not as of now. We can go around and create that, don't worry, right? So the one way of doing this is either just writing black, or what you can do is just mention the code. But if for the code, you'll actually will have to go around and do a lot of research for the codes and stuff, right? So you'll have to go around and do a little research on the codes. But again, it completely depends on you, that if you're using a very generic kind of like a color, that you can just write it out here, that's going to be completely fine, right? So it starts from 6 zeros and it ends to 6 Fs, which is going to be a white color, right? If you could say that it's a white border now out there, right? So it starts with 6 zeros and it ends with 6F, which is completely from starting from black to white and everything in between, right? Yeah, you have to get the accurate color. If you want to get the accurate color, what you can do, you can go to W3 schools, I guess, and there they have a kind of like a color palette. You can just click onto any palettes and go around and look at the code as well, right? So good little application that they have created, right? You can go get the color wheel if you want to be very specific on what the things you want to go around and cover. So this is how. Now the another thing that you might see a lot of people doing is using RGB. So RGB is basically a pattern of red, green, and blue that you can go around and use. If let's suppose if I use 100, 200, and 300, this would typically would be a color, right? So you could see that it's a color. So it's a combination of red, blue, and green. You could see a lot of people, a lot of developers doing this way. But nowadays nobody uses RGB. Either it's a code or either it's a color. So I'm just gonna keep that as black, right? So keep that in mind. So you could see colors in 3 different ways: either the name of the color, the code of the color, or the value of the RGB. There is another value which I'm not gonna go around with. So you can also go around and do HSL. So HSL is also kind of like a way of mentioning what the color that you want to go around and do, right? But I'll highly recommend either stick to the name of the color or stick to the code of the color. Anything would go good. Uh, you have to be very specific about that, right? If let's suppose if you want to go around and go to Amazon and you like a color, you can go around and look at the color as well. So if let's suppose if I go to Amazon.in and you like a color, let's say this color, what you can do is just inspect the page. You can go around and inspect the page and go in here on the headers and stuff. You can go to styles and here you will find anything and everything. You'd find colors, you'll find the code of the colors. If I could like zoom it a little bit more, you can find out all the colors. What are the colors? You can find out here the color part, right? So the color value is RGB 0, 113, 113. So if you like any color, you can go around and have a look on that color. You can pretty much could get the values out from that, right? So that is the way. Yeah. So this is one of the shortcut ways. This is what I generally use, by the way, right? So this is what I generally do. Like if I go to any website and find that color good, I can do that. Chalo, let's not waste time. Chale, box model start kare. This is the very basic part of CSS. Let's move to a little advanced part of the CSS, shall we? Let's have a look on the advanced part. Shall we? Chalo, great. Now let's talk about few things. There is a very important concept in CSS which you call this as box model. Let's talk about box model for a little second. Let's say if you're working on a lot of divs. Let's suppose if you remember we have created something like this, that this div is going to be the class as container, right? This is the class container. And in the class container, what you're trying to do is contain another div inside this, right? It could be a div1, I'm just going to call this div1. I'm not writing classes or anything. And let's suppose this is end of div1. Then we have div2 and so on and so forth, right? Div2 and so on and so forth. Now, you need to imagine each and everything as a box. This is a box. This is a box. Any of the other div that you're creating is going to be a box. Just give me 1 second. I'm telling you about span tags. Just wait a second. This div itself is going to be another div. Think about this in this way, right? I'm telling you, this is the use, this is the utility of div. That's what I'm telling you. For styling, you need to understand each and everything as a div. अरे यार span tags, तुम तो चलो मैं बता देता हूँ span tags. देखो span tags क्या होता है? Span tags is something wherein let's suppose if you wanted to just let's suppose you only wanted to style this amount of part. Let's suppose starting from here and ending at here, you only wanted to style this amount of part. So what do? You cut this out and you put a span tag around this, right? You put a span tag, and anything that you want to go around and style, you can go around and put out here. And let's suppose the style attribute that I wanted to use is here. It's let's suppose font family. Let's suppose I'll go to font family, and let's suppose I wanted to make it cursive, right? Save, and if I have a look out here, you'll see that only a block of code or a block of thing is going to be what you call this cursive. The reason we do this because the span is going to be an inline element, right? It's very different than paragraph. If you might have kept it in paragraph rather than just writing it in span, what would happen is that sorry, span may, I'm just gonna keep this as p, just p, nothing else. And then in here also, I'm just going to end the p. So what would happen in here is that it would come to a new line, though it would be styled, but it would come to a new line. Why? Because paragraph is a block level element. Do you remember we talked about this? But only if you want to style only a little part of, or you want to go around and access only a little part of your whole framework or a whole article, then you use span tags. I hope this made sense to everybody. So this is how you can use span tags. Are we good? So this looks exactly this way. Are we good till this part? That what is span and what's the difference between span and p? Are we good? Chale aage. All right. All right. So somebody was asking me that what is going to be the utility of div. So let's have a discussion on that. That what is the utility of div? Now, if you're talking about divs for that matter, if you want to actually understand div, that div is nothing but a container. It's like a box. जैसा box के अंदर कुछ सामान रखते हो ना, when you keep something in the box, it's exactly the same thing. When you're what you're doing, you're saying I'm going to create a container class as div. This is going to be one box. This is going to be box 1. This is going to be box 2. This is going to be box 3. This is going to be box 4 and box box 3 and box 4, right? Now in this, what you can do is think everything as box. Let's suppose if I talk about this particular div, I can expect this div to be a box. Now just have a look on this box, because this box is really, really important. This box would have few certain things. This could be 3 things. Either something which is going to be inside of this box, something which is outside of this box, and the third thing could be the box itself. Try to understand this. Anything which is put inside the box is called as padding. Padding means the space inside the box. Any of the space which is outside the box is called as anybody? Anyone who knows about it? Anything which is outside the box is called as margin. Margin? No, outside the box. See, अगर आप भूल जाते हो ना कभी ऐसी चीजें, if you forget all of these things, you can go to your Chrome. No, it's not called as overflow. Definitely not called as overflow. And if you'll just have a look on this particular box, this is called as padding. The outside part is called as margin, and the box itself is called as border. So we have this padding, the space inside the block. The space outside the block is called as margin. And the third thing, which we have just seen, is called as border. Border is the outline of the box. So let's say if how is this going to help you out in development? Let's talk about that. Are we ready? Are we ready? Let's go around and look at the utility of this box module. Shall we? Shall we? Quickly, give me yes. If you're ready, we can start talking about that. Now, if you have a look on this particular container, which outside which I've just created up a border, you could see that the content inside this border is so much in line with the border, right? So what I want to do is push the data inside a little bit. What we could do, we could use this, what you call this as a box model. So what we could do, we could come to this container. This container is which container? This is the main container. If you remember, this is the main container, which is containing everything. So what I'm going to do in the main container, I'm just going to say that, hey, I need a padding, and this padding is going to be of, let's suppose, of 10 pixels, let's say. If I save this, you'd see now the content inside this boxes is pushed inside a little bit. Can you see that? Can you see that? Initially, if I was not writing this, initially when I was not writing this, you'd see if I save this, this is towards the border. You know, it's in line towards the border. But the moment I write padding is 10 pixels, you can do it something like this. Again, you have a lot of different things that you can just go around. If let's suppose you only wanted to do the padding in the left hand side, so you can just write padding left, let's suppose 10 pixels. So it's only going to pad to the left hand side, nothing else. So it's only going to pad from 10 pixels to the left, right? So if I'll open this up a little bit, you'll see that the more of the padding is done at the left hand side. Again, you have a lot of different things that you can go around with, which is called as padding left, padding top, padding bottom. But a lot of developers use a very shorthand. When you write padding, you can write the padding in such a way in a clockwise manner, starting from the top. You could mention the value of the top, then you can go to the right, then you can go to the down, or what you call this as bottom, and then you can go to the top, right? These are four parts of the padding. You can add padding to all of these four various parts, right? So I can just come here and say padding, and I can mention the values from top, see it in a clockwise manner: top, right, bottom, left. Oh, sorry, it's going to be top, right, bottom, left. And then here in, I can just come here and let's suppose I want to mention 5 pixels, 10 pixels, 5 pixels, and 10 pixels, right? And if I save this, you'd see it looking something like this. Can you see this? Can you see this? So 5 from top and bottom, and 10 from left and right, right? So this is how it's done. So from the right and left, it's going to be 10 pixels. From top and bottom, it's going to be 5 pixels, right? So this is how you can use padding. And border is something that you have just seen. So you can mention the border. The border also have 3 values: the thickness of the border, and then the style of the border. It could be dotted. It could be, if I keep this as dotted, you would see it would be a dotted kind of like a border, right? It's a dotted border. It could be a solid border as well. And the color of the border, which whatever value that you want to give it to, right? Chalo. All right then. So let's suppose, if you want to increase the size of what you call this as a margin, you can also mention the margin as well. So you can just come here and say margin, and let's suppose if you want to keep the margin just for experimental purposes, I'm just going to keep this 50 pixels, and you'd see that from all of the other surfaces outside the box, you'll find 50 pixels of the margin being set, right? 50 pixel of the margin being set. Okay. So this is something that we can totally could do. किसका width? इसका width? चलो width 50% ले लो, सही है, ठीक है. See, all of these things that you're doing is definitely it's going to be responses automatically, right? Box model does every of the styling automatically as responsive. So you need to keep that in mind, right? It's definitely it's going to be. We'll not discuss media queries. Most probably we'll discuss the media queries in Bootstrap, not today, because we don't have a lot of time. So we'll discuss media queries in tomorrow's session. Okay? Media queries kar lenge. We'll talk about mobile first views and desktop first views. We'll talk about both of these things. Shall we move ahead? If you're ready, then I'm ready. I'm going to tell you about few different things as well. Shall we? Okay, great. Now, यहाँ पे you can also do something which is called as displays. Okay, are we good till here, till the box model? Are we good with the three things of the box model? 5 to 6:30. It's going to be 5 to 6:30, not 5 to 6. It's going to be 5 to 6:30. Okay, chale, Shall we move ahead? Shall we move ahead? Chalo, nice. So we have discussed on to the three very important concepts of the box model, which is padding, margin, and border, right? So padding is things inside the box, margin is something outside the box, and I'm just gonna keep this 5 pixels, right? So it would look a little prettier. Or rather, I'm just gonna call this 70%. That would be okay. Let's keep this 80%. That would be okay as well. Yeah, let's keep it 80%. Right. Now, here you could see, herein you could see that whatever navigation bar that I've created, right, you could see that these are not aligned in a good way, right? So you can again mention the CSS properties or the box model out here. You can just come here and say that this is going to be, sorry, this is going to be, let's say, anchor. Let's suppose the class as anchor, right? And I'm going to give the class to every of the other A tags except for the last one. Except for the last one. And the reason I'm doing this, save, I'm going to go to the styles.css and I'm just going to say dot anchor. And in this dot anchor, I'm just going to say what? Padding to the right, it's going to be, let's say, 30 pixels. Save, and you'd see that it's moved up a little bit, right? Even in here as well, I'm just going to give the classes anchor, save. So you'd see these are aligned more properly, right? So yeah, so you can go around and create the navigation bar or something like this as well. Chalo, let's move to the display part. Hai, let's move to the display. Now, if you remember, we have talked about displays and we have talked about inline properties and block level properties and stuff like that. You can also change the display properties of any of the attributes, which is by default. Correct. You'll have to write the code for the same. Left to right, you will have to write the code for the same. Even if you want to go around and do it from right to left, then also you're supposed to write the code for the same. Right? Everything that you will be doing for sign purposes, you'll have to go around and write the code for it specifically. Right? All right. So let's talk about, okay, let's go around and talk about these anchor tags itself. Now, if I ask you people, what is the behavior of an anchor tag? Is an anchor tag an inline element or a block level element? Is the anchor tag an inline element or a block level element? Answers in the chat section. Okay. Inline. Everybody knows that it's going to be inline because it's not taking the new line. Rather, it's taking the space just right next to it. Right. But again, you can go around and actually change the properties of all of these things, which is done by which you call this as display. In this display, if I keep this as block, these inline elements would be changed to block level elements, as you could see out here. Right. So you can actually change the properties of an inline element to a block element, from a block level element to a what you call this as an inline element, right? You can make it either three of the properties. Either you can make somebody look like as a block, or you can make something look like an inline. So it's already inline, so it's not gonna make a lot of difference. If let's suppose if I talk about this inner container, inside this inner container, if I'll actually will have a look on this, I can actually make them look like inline. If I save this, you'd see that it's going to be inline now, right? So yeah, inline is different. Inline means when you want to make any block level element as an inline, right? And the opposite is completely true. If you want to make any inline to look like a block, you will have to mention something like of a block, right? So that is also something that you can totally could do. So if you'll save this, you'll see something like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna comment this out for a little second so that you could know that you can also do something like that. I'm just gonna get rid of this, right? So you have also something of a display property. Chalo. Let's talk about positions. We'll talk about flex boxes. I have a complete thing for flex boxes for you people, right? So don't worry about that. I have a complete thing for flex boxes. We'll talk about flex boxes in very, very detail. Don't worry. Okay? We'll talk about display flex. Chalo. Are we ready? Shall we move ahead? Shall we move ahead? Shall we talk about the positions? For positions, I would highly would recommend that I should actually go around and create a different file for me. So I'm just gonna call this let's call this page2.html. So now in this page 2, what I can do is just link this page to this. I'm just going to call this page 2 so that I could easily navigate. So this is going to be in CSS page 2, and it's going to open to a new line. So I'm just going to say target as blank. Save page 2, page 1, I guess. Yeah, so I'm just going to rename this to page 1. Rename to page 1. Chalo. And also I'm just going to create the page1.css for styling part. Now in page 1, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do a lot of things. Rather, I'm just going to display you what the functionality of this position is going to be. So for this, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create something of a div inside this, and this div is going to look very, very ugly, right? So for this, I'm just going to go around and create this div, and this div would have a class as, let's say, class as box1. And then again, I'm just going to go around and create another div so that you can actually go around and could understand what the position is going to be. So I'm just going to save this. Now, if I go to index.css, oh, sorry, page1.css, in here, I'm just going to do what? I'm just going to grab onto box1, and I'm just going to do certain styling. So in this box1, or rather page1, so I'm just going to call this box1, right? So this is going to be box1. So in this box1, what I'm going to do, now just have a look on it, that what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set the width as for, let's suppose, 100 pixels. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just also going to give the height as, let's suppose, 150 pixels. And for just for understanding purposes, I'm just going to color this out for red. And similarly, what I'm going to do, I'm also going to give you the normal styling for box 2 as well. And in this box 2, I'm just going to give it 100. And also let's keep it 100, let's say. And let's call this blue, just for understanding purposes. Blue. Save. Now if you'll go to page 1, you'll see, yeah, what's happening. I mentioned out page 2, which should page 1. Save. Now if I'll go to page 1, you'll find two different array. What happened? Where set kiya? Is something happened? Like page 1 I mentioned out a div, was a blocks, this was a box, and I mentioned this as width, color, and everything, I believe so. So what's the problem? Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So I just actually need to provide out with the link, right? Sorry, page1.css. Great. How stupid of me. It's necessary to write octave. Maybe it's not displaying right now, or maybe anything. What's the problem now? No, not exactly. It should have worked because I've already mentioned everything, right? Let me just write something so that I could know it's getting rendered. So I believe in the CSS, I'll have to mention, let's suppose display as block. Or maybe border. Chalo, border de dete hain. Let's suppose border is going to be 1 pixel solid. Let's suppose red. Oh, shoots. What am I doing? Damn. It should have been a background color. Damn, what am I doing? I get confused with, sorry, never mind. Background color. I got confused with colors and background. Okay, so can you see this now? Can you see this? So I'll just get rid of this text out here. Can you see these two boxes? Now let's talk about positions for a little second. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's talk about positions. Now, positions in cases of your CSS is going to be of different categories. There are typically three types of position, or I should say four types of positions. One is static. The first part that you're seeing already out here, which is this red blocks or this blue box, this is by default is going to be something called as static. Static means when one box overlaps onto the head of the another block. As you could see out here, this is static. Even if you don't write it, it's going to be static. Static means which is not changed, right? So static is the default part. This position is called as static position, wherein the bottom of the first box is touching onto the head of the second box, as you could see out there, right? There are different positions you could change around onto these boxes. These boxes could be changed, could be given to a new position, and these position either could be an absolute position, either it could be a relative position, or it could be a fixed position. Let's talk about all of these three positions for a little second, right? If let's suppose if we talk about absolute position, let's start with absolute position. What is going to be an absolute position? An absolute position is going to be an absolute position depending upon its ancestor. What is the ancestor in this case? The ancestor for this particular div is going to be the body itself. That means whatever is going to be the parent of this particular div, or any of the elements that you have mentioned before this div, is going to be the ancestor of this particular div, which is in red color. That means if I go to the styles or this page 1.css, and if I go to this box 1, and in this box 1, if I write something like position, and if I want to make this position as, let's say, absolute position. So in this absolute position, what would happen is that if I just save this, you won't find any changes, right? You won't find any changes. Why did this blue box get away from here? We'll talk about that in a little second. But you'd see that the red box that you'd see has no changes as of now, right? It does not have any changes, right? This absolute would change if you would change the value of its top or of its bottom values. Now, if let's suppose if I keep this top as, let's suppose, 0 pixel, did you change the value? Did you change how did this box change? Even if I keep this as left 0, save, you'd see it tilted a little bit to the left. Can you see that? If I'm not writing top 0 and left 0 for a little second and save this, you'd see that this is the relative position. This is the default position. The moment I'm going to write top 0 and left 0, what would happen is, I'm just going to annotate this. What would happen is that it would take this value, which is off for the parent, and it will take to the 0th pixel value of the top and 0th pixel value of the left. Yeah, it is. Why is it? We'll talk about that in a little second. But just have a look on this red box. In this red box, I am mentioning the left value as 0. As you can see, I'm mentioning the left value as 0. And I'm also mentioning the top value as 0. That means the ancestor of this is going to be fixed in a position wherein the top value is going to be at the 0th pixel, and the left value is also going to be at the what you call this as the 0th pixel. So if I mention something like this would shift to top left of the value. So if I just mention out it in this way, in the absolute way, you'd see if I save this, you'd see that it would move to the extreme. Oh, just give me 1 second. It's an important call. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So this red box is relative. If this absolute to the parent, what is this parent? This parent is going to be the head. Oh, sorry, the body. As you could see, this div has an ancestor of this body. Does this make sense to everybody? But what did I do? when you want to try to change the position of one particular box relative to its ancestor, this would happen. Now, if let's suppose if I go to the CSS part of this particular file, and in this box too, if I try to write the same exact same thing, just see what would happen. Oh, sorry. If I copy this up and mention this out here, okay, what's happening? If I come here and paste this, save. Did you see that it also aligned it to its previous value? What was the previous value? The previous value of this div was this div1. So it aligned itself in the way or in the manner of, now if I go around and write something like top of 10 pixel, what would happen? It would come down. Absolute means relative to its parent. Absolute means relative to the parent. I'll not call this parent, but rather ancestor. Ancestor means the tag which is just before this tag. If you want to separate these up, what will you do? If let's suppose they are overlapping to each other, right? It's overlapping to each other, and you want to bring red wala box little down. So what will you do? You will make it position as absolute, and you will say that, hey, from your top position, just leave 10 pixels. So the moment you'll save this, you'd see that it will move to the 10 pixels now, right? Right? And the same thing you could do at the bottom as well. If you just write bottom and save this would look exactly this way. Is it making sense? That what is the position? The position in case of your absolute is going to be depending upon what is your ancestor. I hope this makes sense, guys. Yeah, does this make sense? What I'm trying to explain you, the absolute value will be in reference to of that of your parent one. What, not exactly parent, but rather ancestor, right? So the ancestor for this box is going to be this particular box. That is why the moment I was doing 0 pixel and 0 pixel, they started overlapping. Array, top. Save. You could see that they started overlapping, right? Does this make sense? They started overlapping. If you want to place the blue box right next to the, oh, in that case, you'll have to mention the another kind of like the position, which is called as the relative position. That would be a relative position, right? But this position is going to be depending upon what your ancestor is going to be. In this case, the ancestor is going to be your body ancestor. Make sense? It's fine if it's not making sense. We can talk about this in Bootstrap as well. Okay. How many of you got confused with positions? Be honest with this, because I see a lot of confusion out here. I definitely can see a lot of confusions on positions. How many of you got confused with positions? You got, right? So abhi filhal ke liye, let's do one thing. Let's yeah, this positions is little confusing. It definitely is confusing. So let's skip this position wala part. We'll talk about position in tomorrow's session, which is going to be Bootstrap. Can we do that? Bootstrap will make you understand things in a little better way, right? So we can do that. All right, rather we can do rather pretty more interesting things. We can do rather more interesting thing, and that more interesting thing is going to be let's talk about shadows and stuff, right? Let's talk about shadows, opacity, and border radius. Shall we do that? Let's do one small little thing. I have to get the, let's say if I go to Google and if I write CSS3 image, I just want to go around and download one of the images for CSS3. So if I go around and get this, so I'm just going to say save image as CSS3 logo, let's say. And now what I'm going to do is, where is it saved, by the way? Where did it save it? It saved it in the desktop itself. That's great. So I could go to the desktop. So I could just save this in the TFA, and in that TFA, I'm just going to paste it in CSS, right? So now what I'm going to do is, chalo, let's do one thing. So let's get rid of this for a little second, right? What I'm going to do in this case, it's going to be something like this. So I'm just going to get rid of this. We'll talk about positions in tomorrow's session, right? You got confused a little second. Right. Let's say what I want to do in here in the HTML, let's say I want to create an H1, right? I want to go around and create an H1. In this H1, what I'm going to do, I want to, चलो इसमें ना अभी कुछ टेक्स्ट डालते हैं, चलो डाल लेते हैं, वैसे कोई टेक्स्ट डाल लेते हैं. Let's suppose CSS course, let's say, right? And let's go around and keep an image, the image tag. And in this image, I'm just going to give it the source, and the source is going to be CSS and this logo wala part, right? Now in this, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write a little inline CSS, or rather you can just mention it out here because we only have 2 elements. So what we can do, we can write the value for H1 or the styles for H1. And in this H1, I'm just going to say position as relative, right? What is this relative position? We'll talk about that in tomorrow's session. But let's say I'm just going to keep this relative. I'm just going to mention the value of the top as, let's suppose, 125 pixel. That would be completely fine. For inserting any image, is it mandatory to save it in the same directory? Yeah, it's mandatory, right? Or you can just paste onto the link that I told you in the yesterday's session, or you can just get any link from Google and stuff, right? And I'm just going to keep this 15 pixel. And for save, so it's going to come here. And for image, what I'm going to do is going to keep the width as, let's say, 50%. Will that be okay? Yeah. So now in here, as you could see that you have a written thing which is called as CSS course, but you could see that this CSS course is overlapping onto the image. Can you see that? And you actually cannot read a lot of things in the case when you have a scenario, something like this. Can you see the scenario? Can you see the scenario? And this would be the scenario for a lot of times when you try to do something kind of like a background image, kind of like a scenario, when you mention the Z index and stuff like that. In that case, this would be the scenario that would be definitely would be coming in your way, right? So let's talk about that, right? There is a property in the case of your image, which is called as opacity. This opacity is a property that you can mention, and this opacity ranges from 0.0 to 0 or to 1.0, which means if you mention any opacity to 0.0, this 0.0 would be the most transparent image. That means if I mention opacity to 0 and save this, you'd see that the image is gone. Can you see that? That this means 0.0 is the most transparent, wherein 1.0 is going to be the most prominent one. Save, this is the most prominent image, the image that you actually see, right? And you have to mention a value which is between 0 to 1 in order to mention. Let's suppose if I give 0.5 and save this, you'd see you can actually now can go ahead and read the any of the things which is written on the image. Can you see that? And this is how we actually create a lot of watermarks. You might have seen a watermarks dekha hai? That even in official websites, there are a lot of watermarks which are being done. This is how they actually create the watermarks, right? By mentioning the opacity parameter. Rather, if I should call this 0.4 would be the or 0.6 would be the good value. So if I save this, this looks little better, right? Opacity is, that means how opaque that image is going to be. Lesser would be the value, lesser would be the opacity, lesser would be opaque, right? So it makes more transparent value, right? So if you want to make it transparent, you will have to write our range, which is going to range from 0 to 1. That is something that you need to keep in mind, right? But as you could see, even if you have a look on this page, you would see that this CSS course is still not looking so good. It's still not so prominent. Can you see that? It's still not so prominent. It's not so prominent. You can actually go around and do certain more stuff onto this, which are called as shadows. You can add shadows to this H1. Let's do that. Let's say I want to make this text look little more prettier, right? So what you can do, you can add something called as text shadow, right? In case of your text shadow, in case of text over the image or images over the text, it could be anything, right? Both will work exactly the same way. If you try to overlap text over an image, or if you try to overlap the image over the text will come out, right? If you try to overlap this, the text will come out. Either it could be an image over text or it could be a text over image. Both are the same thing in CSS, right? Even in HTML. So if you try to put an image, so even you could see that even if I make this opaque, most opaque, which is 1, you'd still see that there is going to be the text which is being written out in front of it, right? Even if it's most opaque, Deepak, it's still going to, render up whatever you are writing over it, right? If two elements are going to collapse, the second element is definitely is going to look like this, right? You cannot go around and write 2 or something like that. That's not possible. So the most opaque could be 1, and you could see even in the most opaque condition, it's still going to look pretty much the same way, right? So I'm just gonna keep it 0.6. Now in this case, you could see that the CSS course in this particular case, it's still not prominent, right? It's still not okay, guys. I hope you're not getting confused with the same. Are you trying to understand this? Opacity, is opacity okay for everyone? I hope you're not getting confused as you got confused with positions. If you're not getting confused, just give me a yes if everything is okay. Okay, great. All right, so this is the opacity, right? So just in case if you want to make something as a watermark, or if you want to keep something as a background image, this is something that's definitely it's going to help you out, which is this opacity wala, thing, right? Now the next thing is, if you want to make this text, the CSS course of a text, want to make it look more prominent, you can go around and make it more prominent. How can you do that? Let's talk about that for a little second. So there is a thing which is called as text shadow. Now the text that you have written in case of your H1, you can actually go around and add shadows to the same. Now if you are mentioning shadows, there are again 3 properties to the same. The shadow of the horizontal position, the shadow of the vertical position, and then you also will have to mention the color of the shadow, right? So this is how you actually mention the text shadow. For example, if I could actually go around and could do let's say 3 pixel, 3 pixel, 3 pixel from horizontal, that is left to right, 3 pixel from top to bottom, that is going to be 3 pixel, and let's make it red for a little second because it's blue and red would be more prominent out here. So if I save this, you'd see that this CSS course now is little more prominent. Can you see that? That it gave it a little shadow kind of like an effect. Can you see that? The shadow effect on the text that you have written out there. Yeah, right? And you could see that this shadow is actually not so blended up. So you can actually go around and blend that up, which is called as the blur property. So if you can just go around here and if you just write 2 pixel, you could see that it will blur out a little bit. Can you see that? Now it's looking more of a prominent thing. Can you see that? Can you see that? So this is the horizontal way. 3 pixel is horizontal, 3 pixel is vertical, and then there is another property which you call this as blur property, wherein you can just go around and tell that how blur this image should look like. Are we good? Are we good? आज के लिए ना एक काम करते हैं, अभी फिलहाल इतना ही रखते हैं, and the left off part we could do it in tomorrow's session, right? And we can, because Bootstrap is not going to take much time. Bootstrap would be completed more than in like an hour or so, because it's all based on classes and stuff like that, right? All you need to do is just put the CDN and write classes and stuff like that. So yeah, are we good? So just give me 1 second. Huh? I'll just share you out to the form. Let me open my WhatsApp for a little second. Huh? So just in case if you have any feedback, abhi ruk jao yaar. Where are you going? Just give me 1 second. Don't go anywhere. Stay for a little second. So I just want to share you out a small little form which is on my WhatsApp. So I just stop the screen share. And yeah, I guess this is the form. And I'm just gonna copy this out. Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry. So you can actually go around and fill this form, which is going to be a feedback form. Of course, your feedback is really valuable for us people, right? Just give me 1 second. Sorry for that. So this is kind of like a form that you can go around and fill it, right? So it would be a feedback kind of like a form. Your feedbacks could be any feedbacks for that matter, right? It could be a very negative feedback. I'm completely okay with that, right? So your negative feedback is also going to be constructive for us, right? So just do mention your honest feedbacks. Whatever you feel about these sessions, do write your honest feedbacks for the same. Okay. Can I trust you people that you're going to be a little honest with me, people? Right? Can I expect that from you people? Yeah. Chalo. Great. Nice. Great. And tomorrow as well, I'm just going to give you a small little assignment. Okay. I'm going to give you a small little assignment that you actually need to finish off. And also do mention out your details, because we'll be sending out your certificates for the same, right? Because you're attending these sessions. We actually need to send out you people the certificates. Recording sessions, trust me on this. By tomorrow morning, you'll get the link of both the sessions, for today's session and for previous session as well. Trust me on the fact, right? Without any fail, I'll do that. I'll make my team sit and do that. Don't worry about that. Say again. Are we good? Are we good? And yeah, for the people who were interested for uh, the GitHub and LinkedIn, you can actually do that. If you want to go on to my LinkedIn, oh, sorry, if you want to go out to my GitHub, you can actually have my GitHub. You can go around and follow me up if you want. If you find the repository is useful, you can actually go around and do that. So I'm just going to go onto my profile. And I'm just gonna. So what is GitHub? Okay, so GitHub is a place where you like put all your codes and projects so that other people can go around and see what kind of projects you have built. I'm not able to fill the form. How many of you can are not able to fill the form? Guys, do fill that form, because you will not get the certificate elsewise, right? Because we won't be having any details for you people. Your was done. So go around and have a look on it using your Gmail account. So this is my LinkedIn, this is my GitHub for the people who are asking for that. So you have that. Okay. Open it on desktop. That would be completely fine. Open it up on desktop. So yeah, nice. So any doubts as of for now? Any doubts? Can you please send the form once again? I'll do that. I'll definitely will. Copy and paste. Yeah, I'll give you the assignment. And that assignment is going to be very, very helpful. The reason is that you'll be creating up your own portfolios. And I'll be giving you a few examples of the kind of like the portfolios that my previous students has made, so that you get a clear idea that what people are expecting from you as a for industries, right? So yeah, even I'm curious to teach you people Bootstrap, right? So just in case if you'd be having any doubts on Bootstrap wala part, that is also something that we can totally take onto your doubts. So if you have any doubts, put your doubts in the chat section. And if you are good, just give me a big yes. We'll end up with the session. Or if you have any feedbacks or anything that you want to talk about, we can talk about that. How many days of the course? So tomorrow we'll cover out. I basically would have showed you this, right? If you remember, I showed you this. That if you go to the page that we have, you can go around and follow us. This is Technology for All. I'm just going to share you out with the link as well, right? And if you actually will have a look on the post, this post contains every of the details, right? You can go around and have a look on the details as well. uh, where are the post? So in here you can find out that this would be the post, right? So this contains all the date related to what would be covered on what date. Yeah, there would be the certification of this workshop. Definitely, it's gonna be. PPT is related to HTML and CSS. So one of the links that I love the most is called as Interneting is Hard. You can go and follow onto this link. This link is like very cool, kind of like a link. You can go around and have a look. This looks somewhat like this. This is the thing where you can go around and learn HTML and CSS if you want in detail. So this is the link. So are we good? Yeah, there would be certification. Definitely, it's going to be certification. Workshop, we are going to conduct this workshop from next Wednesday onwards. I'll be teaching you JavaScript. Don't worry. So yeah, you guys can leave. Right. So if you're good, just give me a yes. We'll end up with the session. If you have any doubts, put your doubts in the chat section, and then we'll move ahead. Right. Sure. Nice. And else you would be having any queries, you can DM me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Yeah. If you'll be having any other doubts, you can DM me on LinkedIn. I'll be there. I'll respond you up. Don't worry. I'll tell you everything. Right. So DM me on LinkedIn. I'll tell you out over there. So shall we move? Can I end up with the session? Yeah, I'll definitely will share you the recorded sessions. Okay. All right. All right then. Thank you so much for joining. Let's meet on tomorrow and we'll do a lot of different things. All right. Chalo. Thank you so much and we'll meet tomorrow. All right. Chalo. Bye bye guys. Bye bye. Bye bye.